Did you know that you could add a keyline to a series of objects on different layers in Photoshop? And if you're in a more up-to-date version, make that keyline multi-attribute. Well, if that's something you need to know, you're in the right place here in the Work Smarter Not Harder dojo with me, Tony Harmer, aka the Design Ninja. Alright, so here I am in Photoshop and I've got this document that has a background and then it has a layer with a spanner or wrench if you prefer, just there, and above that a gear icon, both pasted in separately from Illustrator. They're also smart objects, and what I'm going to do is with the spanner smart object, I'm going to duplicate that layer using Command J. Okay, so now I've got a copy. I'm then going to free transform that, so Command T, Control T on Windows, and then right click and choose to flip that horizontally. Okay, done, perfect. And by the way, although I'm working with Illustrator graphics here, these could be literally anything. There are so many different ways you could work. So now I've got those two there. What I'm going to do is select all three things, the two spanners or wrenches if you prefer, and the gear, and then I'm going to put those into a layer group. So Command G to do that. Now I could give this a name, of course, such as icon, just here like so. And then just to the right of that name, I'm going to double click and get to my layer styles. So I'll go ahead and add a stroke to the outline here. And what we'll do is I'll keep this nice and simple just to begin with and come back to it in just a second. Then I'm going to choose a pretty dark gray, somewhere like that I think is good. And then I'm just going to increment the size a bit here. Let's make that nice and chunky around that. Perfect, like so. And it's going to the outside. Excellent, that's working pretty well. So now you can see we've got the basic keyline around these objects. But what if something needs to change? Well, that's the beauty of working this way, very flexible. I can go into the icon layer here and go to my original spanner. Now I'm going to double click that, which will take me back actually into the Illustrator document here. Although if it was something in Photoshop, you'd end up with a PSB. I can then select that and go around like so. Okay, and then save that. If I go back to Photoshop, you'll see that that's updated because the flipped copy is working pretty well there. Well, let's do two things here. First of all, let's see what that would be like if I actually bought that in from Illustrator in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead, select these layers and remove them. Now remember that the actual stroke effect here is applying to anything that's in that group. So I'll go back to Illustrator, I'll close the Vector Smart object here, and this is the original artwork. Now I'll click on the wrench here. What I'm going to do is add an effect to this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose Distort and Transform and then Transform. And what I want to do, just checking the grid down at the bottom here as well to make sure that's from the center, which is what I want this time. I'm going to increment that to 1 and then check Reflect Y. So now I've got a flipped copy working with this art. I'll hit OK, and then I'll copy this out and go back into Photoshop and paste it. Now I'll do that as a smart object just here, which means the art I'm pasting becomes like its own encapsulated object. Now I could have also done this by placing a linked object from the file menu inside of Photoshop, but just for now, we'll do this. So I'll say OK to that. Now you'll see that already it's got the keyline around it. It's not in the right place in the stack, but we can change that in a moment. What I'm going to do though is make sure this link icon is on in the options bar, and then I'll use stapler accident finger by hovering over the word W. Okay, and then just dragging to the left like so. Okay, don't worry about the marks that are going around the outside. That's just a graphics card thing that's going on today for some reason. But once that's done, I'll hit the tick. Now we see that as soon as I move that to the side, okay, and then just undo, everything's back to normal. So I'll bring that down in the stack like so. But now something needs to change. So I've shown this to my client or customer or colleague, whoever, and they said, yeah, that's a bit too 45 degrees for me. Can you bring that down a bit? Let's make it a bit engineering pirate and go for a steeper angle. So I can double click on the Vector Smart object, select the wrench, because remember this one is an effect-based copy, and then just bring that down like so. Save that. Jump back into Photoshop where that updates like so. That's really smart work, right? And it can save you a lot of time. Let's have a look then at upgrading our keyline here. So we can add something like a keyline highlight to it. What we can do is we can go back to the layer effects just here, just double click in that region. Okay, this is on the group, remember? And in more recent versions of Photoshop, some of these different attributes have got a plus next to them, which means you can add extra instances. So I'm going to click on the plus at the top just here, okay, to add a new stroke instance. It basically duplicates what I had before. I'll change the color, so I'm going to go much, much lighter gray here for now. And then I'll start to model this. And basically all I'm going to do here is reduce the size down to something like 3 or 4 pixels just there. I think 4 was working pretty good. Now I've got this nice highlight. You could also enhance this further by choosing a gradient or even a pattern to actually make that highlight just that bit more special. But for now, I'll choose a color and hit OK. And of course, just to show you again, I'm going to go out to this, make an adjustment like so, save it, okay, and go back, and that updates there perfectly. And that's it. So now you know how to create a keyline around multiple layers here in Photoshop, and also how you can work flexibly either with other Photoshop documents or Illustrator documents. And I hope you'll join me next time here in the Work Smarter Not Harder dojo. But for now, we're done. See ya.